I was saying, it's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we are coming today, of course, with the August 21st training camp practice breakdown for the Washington Commanders. We have a lot of clips from today's practice, so make sure you buckle up for those. And of course, we're doing positional group breakdown, starting with the quarterbacks, going all the way to the running backs, the wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, all of that, all the way through the defense, and even some special teams updates as well. Make sure you always stick around for the special teams updates, because we always have some big ones. We don't even exactly know who for sure our starting punt returner is right now, and this starting kicker situation is pretty chaotic as well. But we have Tyler Owens getting some time with the ones today, the starters. We have Dyami balling, Jayden Daniels throwing dimes. This D-line is dangerous. Do we apparently have our franchise kicker? Our rookie safety seems to be making a full switch to off-ball linebacker potentially. We're going to dive into all of that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, man. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stay tuned. I'm keeping y'all updated every single day with everything going on Washington Commanders wise. I may come out with another 53-man roster prediction right before they release it. Stay tuned for that, because they will be releasing that Tuesday. We have a preseason game Sunday. I'm gonna try to find some time Monday. Monday's gonna be really busy for me, but I'm gonna try to find some time on Monday to put out like a 53-man roster prediction, so be on the lookout for that as well. Of course, I will be live streaming the upcoming preseason game against the Patriots, even though I don't believe any starters will play in it. We still have a lot to analyze, because we have a lot of training camp battles going on with a lot of different position groups right now, more specifically receiver, safety, a lot of these different position groups. This last preseason game matters, so we're gonna watch that together, analyze all of that and everything like that. So make sure you stay tuned for everything. Really appreciate y'all. Let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, and before we even actually get to what everything like actually happened in practice today, starting with the quarterbacks, then the running backs, and the wide receivers, and so on and so forth, before practice, just to let you know, this is day 18, and they've officially taken the stands away, because again, no more days of fans being allowed at training camp for this offseason. You'll have to wait till next year for that. So the stands are officially gone. It's just a bunch of just open area now with just grass and dirt, basically. Also, practice was at 1 p.m. today instead of like the usual 9 a.m. that has been throughout training camp for the most part, like 90% of practices. And also, they wore the black helmets today, like you're seeing on the video right now. And just to let you know, this is because they will be wearing the black uniforms in that preseason game against the Patriots, the preseason finale on Sunday, that again I will be live streaming, so be prepared for that. Black helmets in practice Wednesday. I believe they practice again tomorrow. They'll probably wear the black helmets then again, and then we are for a fact wearing the black unis against the Patriots. And I don't know why a lot of people still hate those uniforms. I like them. I mean, of course they're not the best, but I like them, man. I like when we switch it up. Some people already see it as a jinx. I'm not going that far yet. I like them, man, especially it's a preseason game, no starters playing, so I think it's just nice to have some fun there. Really nothing to lose, even if you believe in the jinx for that. And then also shouts out to Mitch Tisler, because he hasn't been doing it very often lately, but he pointed out the fact that Mitchell Tinsley was the first player out there at practice today. And even though this is a guy that I don't necessarily see like making the 53-man roster, maybe he lands on the practice squad, who knows, but apparently that's his first time being first to practice. So that's interesting, man. Maybe this guy's just trying to go that extra mile to show the coaches that he really wants to make this team. Who knows? Also, they're already using the new field, as you can see on the screen right now. They're putting it to use. Remember, there used to be a bad turf field there that has been there for 20 plus years. Dan Snyder just didn't even care enough to spend the money to get it fixed up, to get it changed, rearranged, or whatever. Within 1 year of being our owner, Josh Harris came in here, got rid of that old turf, and put in new grass. You already see the lines there, and it's already usable by the team. That's really cool. And again, I really want to emphasize the fact that this was the field that was closest to the locker room and other facilities. They would have to pass over this field to get to the fields that they actually could use for the past 20 plus years. That is absolutely insane to me, man. Now, moving on to the injuries, we have quite a bit of updates, and really none of them are really that bad, but you know, of course they're not as great as we would hope. We're definitely not a team at 100% capacity right now. Because Dan Quinn said as far as Johnny Newton goes, he's still dealing with a soft tissue injury that is not related to his surgery. And soft tissue injury is already a big concern for me, already a big red flag, because those are the worst ones. And then on top of that, this is separate for the injury that was already keeping him out this entire offseason. He had 1 foot surgery that he had to get that we already knew about. Then later on, he had to get another one that surprised us. And now he's dealing with something soft tissue that has nothing to do with those previous 2 injuries that he was already dealing with in the offseason. So, you know, I'm Mr. Glass half full, but though these are definitely red flags that definitely scare me, but we'll see, because Dan Quinn seems optimistic about his chances of potentially playing week 1, saying that there's even possibly a chance that he and Brandon Coleman could be ready to participate in training camp within the next week or 2. We'll see. We're not absolutely sure there, but we'll see. They said that they're going to try to ramp him up towards the end of this week, and Quinn said that he's hit all of the markers, and the team just wants to be smart about bringing him back. So they're being overly cautious right now. They're taking every step of precaution that they can. Like, I'm not sure if they're saying this, but the way that it sounds to me is that if we had to play a Super Bowl tomorrow, Johnny Newton would play in that game. But if it were like a regular season game, maybe not. And especially with the preseason and these practices that we're having right now, it's not worth it. But I don't think it's just an injury to where he's just completely incapacitated. They just don't want to risk him getting hurt even worse than what he already is right now. So they're just trying to keep him away from that situation. Also, today in practice, Clelin Ferrell and Michael Wiley did not participate today. Clelin Ferrell is your starting defensive end. Michael Wiley, his situation is a bit more interesting, because Clelin Ferrell, since he's your starting defensive end, you know, that's a bad sign for us as fans. Like, oh no, this is potentially one of your starting defensive ends opposite of Dorrance Armstrong, that maybe he's banged up. I'm not exactly sure if it was a vet day off. Who knows? This wasn't even a thing that Dan Quinn reported. The media members just at the practice noticed Clelin Ferrell and Michael Wiley were not participating. Now moving on to Michael Wiley, whereas Clelin Ferrell's situation is a little bit concerning for the fans, us watching, but like for Michael Wiley, it's more so for him, because he's fighting for a roster spot right now. And him being hurt is not a good look. He's looked really explosive, and I would argue that he's pushing for that 3rd spot. I think it's a battle between him and Jeremy McNichols, but if he's hurt right now, and especially depending on how long he's hurt, it seems like Jeremy McNichols may be able to just go ahead and run away with that 3rd spot. And if they only keep 3 running backs, that's very unfortunate. But you probably could end up stowing Michael Wiley away onto the practice squad. He was an undrafted free agent that we signed here, so maybe other teams just aren't very interested in him, so maybe you can get away with that. But I don't know. That's not good news for Michael Wiley trying to make this 53-man roster, who I feel like actually has a better chance than what most fans probably believe he has. Also, Dante Fowler did not participate in practice as well. Shouts out to my boy RVA_point of views. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, subscribe to his YouTube, everything, man. And he said, and I completely agree, this was the first thought I had: what's good with Dante? Is he dealing with an actual injury for real, or is he just getting the Bobby Wagner treatment? And that's a great point to bring up. Is this actually a concern to where maybe Dante Fowler is hurt or something like that? Or is it just a situation where, like, Bobby Wagner hasn't played in a single preseason game, but he's 100% healthy and ready to go? They just don't really see the need for him to participate in these preseason games. He's seen it all, done it all type of situation. And then Brandon Coleman worked today during individual drills, but not during team full work. He was on the side field for that, but at least that's some sign of progress. At least he's doing individual stuff. Apparently dealing with a shoulder injury or something like that. I thought it was a pec injury. I don't exactly know what's going on with Brandon Coleman. But either way, he was back on the sideline with a helmet and did not participate in team drills. Also, just an update, Sam Hartman definitely dealing with a shoulder injury, participated in individual drills, but was also inactive during team drills. But that's progress for him as well. And the Marcus Mariota dealing with a groin injury was not at practice, but did get on the field afterwards to throw some passes with receivers. So I guess we're hearing some positive news as far as like guys getting healthier, if anything. We're not really hearing about anybody getting worse or any recent injuries that you can add to the list. Everybody that's already hurt, that was hurt prior to this training camp practice, it sounds like everybody's, you know, taking the right steps towards getting healthier. So at least that's a glass half full the way to look at it. But it still sucks that right now, just as of today, our starting defensive end opposite of Dorrance Armstrong didn't participate in practice. Our starting left tackle still isn't participating. Our second round, I would say draft still rookie defensive lineman that's going to be just as impactful as Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, I believe, still not practicing. And then even Dante Fowler, who's your situational pass rusher, your pass rush specialist type of guy, he didn't practice today as well. So definitely alarming, but at the same time, it seems like we're in a better situation today than we were yesterday or last week when it comes to injuries. We'll see though. Now moving on to what the coaches said, most specifically Dan Quinn. He speaks before every practice. He had a lot of interesting things to say. First of all, he calls Wednesdays Competition Wednesday. He wants basically the Washington to coin that moving forward, and that basically like on Wednesdays we're going to see a lot of good on good. It's not going to be as much, you know, first stringers versus second stringers versus first stringers and things like that, mixing things up too much. This is more so we want to see the best of the best go against each other type of situation. So I like that situation. I really do. I like the fact that we have like a specific day of the week that they can count on that is going to be the best of the versus the best, the good going against the good, first team versus first team guaranteed. I like that type of stuff. Also, cut down day is looming. It's on the way. Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, on the way, cutting down from 90 to 53. Commanders head coach Dan Quinn said that they will have some difficult roster decisions to make, and that's a good thing. If it's like really easy, it's obvious, then your roster probably isn't that good. But the fact that it's difficult is a good sign. Also, Dan Quinn said, quote, "We're really looking for consistency, because sometimes when a person can be in this spot, they could press to really want to show out," unquote. So he's basically urging, I'm pretty sure this is the message to the players more specifically, but he's just happening to telling us and the media members this, that we're like more so throughout the span of training camp, we're judging you throughout the entire thing. It's not like we just have a final exam coming in this third preseason game. You're graded based upon what you've done throughout the entire training camp, the joint practices, multiple preseason games. It's not like you could just come in and ball out the third preseason game, but you've been non-effective, you've been non-existent up until that point, and you're gonna make the 53-man roster just because you had one standout game. No, they're looking for consistency, and so I believe he also sends that message to the players so that they don't force things. I mean, like he said, he doesn't want players to just like this third preseason game just absolutely go way more all out than they've naturally been going, because they want to get the more natural version of guys. Because say just for example, and he's probably saying it for injuries, but me as a Rico of RicoScores, I'm thinking of it like, what if a guy, you know, knowing that this is the final preseason game that they can potentially prove themselves to make this 53-man roster. Now, what about the regular season? We have 17 games we got to play. Are you not going to show up until that 17th game? So I see the logic out of the way there, and I appreciate that message that he sent into the players, that this is not just like a class where only the final exam matters. The early quizzes, all of the homeworks, the classworks, everything is added into this overall grade. Just because you had a better preseason game against the Patriots than somebody else does not mean you're automatically going to make the team over that other person. Dan Quinn also said that the two groups that have stood out to him the most in both consistency and depth are safety and tight end, and I've been screaming this all summer. I would argue interior defensive line, especially when Johnny Newton gets healthy, and I would say linebacker, of course, is a very deep position. I think tight end and safety are right up there with them. I've been screaming that for months now. Also, shouts out to JP Finley for pulling this. Interesting thought from Dan Quinn ahead of roster cuts. With the new Saturday night call-ups and larger practice squads, Commanders view it as a 70-man roster, not just a typical 53. On the drawbacks of minimal roster cuts until after training camp, he said, quote, "No, I don't find the drawback in it, because I do think there's value in finding that last piece. And so maybe the old days, it was the fourth preseason game. Nowadays, it's the third, where there's more to see. And I would say from the roster spot, from the 40s through 53-man roster. And when we get towards the end of the week, we'll talk about New England into next week, and you'll hear us talk about a 70-man roster now that the practice squad is expanded, and you have veterans, you have call-ups, all of that type of stuff. So we're kind of thinking even in a bigger picture than the 53. So I don't find the downside to it, because a number of people that you have here are going to be some of the ones that you're going to want to continue to work with moving forward, either on the roster or on the practice squad. So no downside for me in that space, unquote. And I completely agree there. I know some people feel like going immediately from 90 to 53 may be somewhat of a disadvantage. I feel like if anything, That just means you have more players longer. When we were after every preseason game cutting it down from what 90 to 80 to 85, then 85 to 80, and then 53 after the third one. I mean, those were just less players that we had to give opportunities in that third preseason game. I didn't like that at all. I definitely prefer to hold on to your 90 as long as you can and then cut down to 53. And then again, to his point also, Dan Quinn bringing up the fact that this practice squad is expanded, and you know, it's almost like you technically do have like a 70-man roster going into the season. Now, granted, unlike the 53-man roster people, those people in those practice squads can be snatched up by other teams. And remember, that's how we got John Ridgeway from the Cowboys. I mean, he was their 5th-round rookie when we took him off of their practice squad. We stole him. They were hoping that he would land on their practice squad. Nobody would care. Nobody would touch him. We stole him. I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking to get some revenge against us in that way, just being petty. We'll see how that goes, though. Now, moving on to the quarterbacks. And first of all, shouts out to Nikki Javala for pointing out the fact that we do have a lot of quarterbacks, man. As you can see in this picture right here, we have 5 of them right now. I mean, 5 gold jerseys. How many teams in the NFL right now have 5 quarterbacks in their joint practices? Of course, Jayden Daniels, Marcus Mariota, Sam Hartman, Jeff Driscoll, and Trace McSorley, because Sam Hartman and Marcus Mariota have both been hurt, and Jeff Driscoll just needs some time to sit down, man. That man has been playing like 2.5 quarters each of the last 2 preseason games, man. Golly. Now, moving on to Jayden Daniels and what he did in practice today. Now, of course, as of like the past couple of weeks, we don't just get like the constant every single throw that Jayden Daniels makes analysis from the media members that are allowed to go to these practices, but we still have some really notable plays. First of all, Zach Selby pointed out the fact that Jayden Daniels threw a great ball to Austin Ekeler, who caught the ball in stride on the right sideline. And matter of fact, after practice, the Washington Commanders uploaded the clip, so if you want to see it, here you go right here. Perfect ball. And we're going to talk about this when we get to the running back part of this video, but hey, man, throws like that, plays like that, definitely make you look at Austin Ekeler like, all right, I may try to sneak him in towards the end of my fantasy drafts to try to make sure that, you know, Jayden Daniels is probably going to look for that a lot. I don't know if y'all have seen it. Maybe y'all haven't watched the all 22 clips or rewatched those preseason games, but I can't remember if it was against the Jets or the Dolphins. I believe it was against the Dolphins. Maybe it was against the Jets. Either way, though, Austin Ekeler broke open out of the backfield on a route where he just went straight vertical right past the linebacker, had at least like 3 yards of separation from him. And I don't remember what the play result was. Maybe that was the same play as the Dyami deep ball from Jayden Daniels where he checked out of the screen. I don't think so, though. There was some other results where Austin Ekeler, Jayden Daniels did not throw him the ball, did not throw the ball his way, but he was like wide open for like 2-3 yards. And so that's something that the coaches, I'm pretty sure Cliff Kingsbury, rewatching that tape, made sure he showed Jayden Daniels, hey, this guy gets open out of the backfield, and then they took advantage of that in practice today. So that's something that's in the works. Austin Ekeler out of the backfield, deep down the field, down the sideline, wheel routes, whatever it takes. We're going to get him used down the field because he's faster than these linebackers out here. Most linebackers in the NFL, and Jayden Daniels has a really pretty deep ball. So that connection could be a real thing this year. It could be a thing of beauty and maybe something that you take advantage of in your fantasy leagues, your fantasy drafts, if you know, just kind of one of those good secrets that are being kept right now. Quiet as kept, Austin Ekeler may be a pretty good fantasy production type of guy, especially PPR leagues. Now, I think Brian Robinson is going to get the most of the carries, the majority of the carries, but PPR-wise, catching the ball out of the backfield. But again, we're going to talk about that in the running back part of this because this isn't even like my point. I completely agree, but somebody else outside of the Commanders fan base that's a fantasy football guy brought up the Austin Ekeler point that I'm talking about. Now, moving on. JP Finley pointed out the fact that Jayden Daniels just had a pass over the middle of the field for those concerned. And that's basically just kind of like sarcasm because, you know, coming out of the draft, a lot of people harped on Jayden Daniels to say he doesn't throw the ball over the field enough, over the middle of the field specifically. And I already felt like that was just nonsense even before we drafted him. And then since we drafted him all throughout voluntary OTAs, mandatory minicamps, training camps, joint practices, he is willing to throw that ball over the middle. Still not exactly sure why people were running with that narrative exactly. But either way, man, I appreciate the fact that JP Finley approached it like that. For those of y'all that somehow still worry about Jayden Daniels throwing it over the middle of the field, here you go. Also, shouts out to Ben Standig for pointing out that Jayden Daniels lofted a mid-level pass to John Bates and then also one through the seam to Zach Ertz as well. So he's finding his connection with his running backs and his tight ends, not just his receivers. This entire offense will be at his disposal. Cliff Kingsbury means that. Jayden Daniels seems to be willing to utilize that as well. He's a guy that even when Zach Ertz was out during that preseason game against the Dolphins, his number one target, even higher than Terry McLaurin. Zach Ertz's connection with Jayden Daniels is even tighter than Terry McLaurin's connection to Jayden Daniels right now. Even without Zach Ertz, Jayden Daniels found a way to get the ball to a myriad of receivers. I mean, so many weapons, so many options. And I like the fact that, again, just in another practice, it's not just a receiver-heavy load. He's getting it to the running backs. He's getting it to the tight ends. And it's not even just one specific tight end like Zach Ertz. It's even John Bates, who's known for his blocking. For pretty much that's about it. That's really why he's here, basically to be a third tackle on the field. But he can go out there and also catch a pass like he's been doing. He showed you that in that preseason game against the Dolphins a couple of days ago. And he had a nice catch today as well. And then also, just real quick for the other quarterbacks, Jeff Driscoll was working as quarterback 2 today because, again, Marcus Mariota's hurt. But he had Dyami Brown on a deep ball. And now, granted, people are saying that Dyami Brown did a great job of adjusting slightly to like the underthrown pass. So it wasn't even necessarily a great pass from Jeff Driscoll. But, hey, man, that guy seems to be fearless out there, man. That guy will throw that ball deep. We saw it even to his detriment in the preseason game against the Dolphins. Ben Sinnott was wide open, one of those plays where Jeff Driscoll attempted to throw the ball to the end zone, well covered, really had no business of throwing it. Of course, it went incomplete. Ben Sinnott wide open for a first down, like right underneath it. So this guy is just a guy that is not afraid to attack the deep field. But interesting though, he's gonna take his shots, man. But that takes me to the point of, with him having a solid preseason, but again, I feel like a lot of people are just too busy looking at the highlights. I don't think people are actually looking at the fact that he's missing a lot of open receivers. So it's not like his preseason has been as great as it seems, especially when you're only looking at the highlights. But still, has he done enough to earn that QB3 spot? For sure. Has he even done well enough to potentially even be quarterback 2? I doubt it at this point, but I think he definitely has earned this QB3 spot. I think Sam Hartman, especially dealing with the shoulder injuries that he's dealing with right now, probably goes to the practice squad unless they just really value Sam Hartman that much and they feel like Jeff Driscoll would eventually like pass through waivers. Nobody else will pick him up, and then we can stow him on the practice squad because maybe they feel like Sam Hartman is more likely to get picked up by another team and stolen before he can reach our practice squad than Jeff Driscoll would. So I don't know, but he's had a pretty good preseason. You can do much worse for a quarterback 3, I can tell you that. Now moving on to the running backs. Like I mentioned earlier, man, Austin Eckler, watch out fantasy football wise. And like I foreshadowed earlier as well, all pro reels, not a Commanders fan, not a Commanders beat reporter, Commanders media member, nothing. No Commanders representative in any way. He did like an article on a lot of the sleeper fantasy guys that you may be able to pick up. A whole article. You have Cortland Sutton. You have a lot of different people. And this is Dane Martinez's article. And it said in the article, Austin Eckler should be on the field for plenty of passing situations to see a ton of checkdowns. I think he's a steal for your flex spot, unquote. So be on the lookout because, you know, as a fantasy football guy, that's a good heads up. But as a Commanders fan specifically, and the reason I'm talking about it in this video is because that sounds like Austin Eckler should be heavily utilized in this offense. You saw the clip earlier about the deep shot, but even just beyond that, if Jayden Daniels is looking, scanning throughout the field, nothing's open, nobody's open, nothing's working, when in doubt, Austin Eckler underneath. And especially if you're doing fantasy, you don't necessarily have to get a lot of yards. You just got to catch a bunch of passes. You're going to get fantasy points in those PPR leagues. Austin Eckler will probably be that guy. He'll probably be safety blanket number 2 for Jayden Daniels. Because right now, there's no denying it. Zach Ertz is his favorite target, clear cut, decisively. It's not even close. Like, it's Zach Ertz up here, everybody else way down here. I guess Terry McLaurin will be 2, and then we can go from there. But as far as safety blankets go specifically, Zach Ertz is clearly number 1. When in doubt, he's going to be open somewhere. Austin Eckler will probably be his second safety blanket. Nothing's open. Just check it down to him. He's open somewhere down there. So I think that's really cool. Something to just watch out for as we get closer to the regular season. Now moving on to the wide receiver position. Zach Selby said, Dyami Brown continues to stand out in practice. Good to hear, man. He had several catches from Jayden Daniels and Jeff Driscoll, but his best moment came from an underthrown ball by Jeff Driscoll that we just talked about a couple of minutes ago. Brown slowed up, came back for the ball, and made the catch for a long gain down the right sideline. This guy's name has come up in what seems like every single training camp practice. Is this finally the year that we can actually believe in Dyami Brown's potential and talent? Because it feels like we kind of go through this every summer, but this summer does feel feel a little different because there's more hype behind it. There's like more production behind it. He's made plays in previous training camps to where it's called like, okay, we can see the potential here. But this one has been like a consistent, it seems like every day in practice, every preseason game, he's making plays. I believe he had more catches than any other wide receiver that Jayden Daniels threw to in that last preseason game against the Dolphins. And then, of course, he was the recipient of the deep bomb. Jayden Daniels' most exciting play of the preseason so far. So, hey, man, this is a guy that matters. You could argue he's probably wide receiver 2 right behind Terry McLaurin right now. It really seems that way. And shouts out to @CommandersVille for bringing up this good point. First of all, he quote tweeted his tweet back in 2022 saying Dyami Brown is always a hair away from being everyone's favorite player, but nope, because he keeps letting us down. At some point, making plays in the offseason, when we get to the regular season, lets us down for one way or another. But then he quote tweeted that today and said, this summer has reminded me of this in regards to Dyami. It's always been right there for him. He just needs the finishing touches. Hopefully he's on that path this time around. I completely agree. Maybe this is the year where we can actually start to believe in Dyami Brown a little bit. You know what I'm saying? The potential has always been there. The talent is there. Can he put it all together? It seems like he is. His main problem has been consistent hands and getting open underneath, because he's been like a one-trick pony, like a deep ball, you know, take the lid off of the defense guy, which is crazy because he's not even that fast of a guy. Even in that deep bomb from Jayden Daniels, it wasn't even like he had serious separation from the corner. So it's crazy because like his superpower was deep ball catching ability, but he's not even a guy that really gets that open on deep balls and things like that consistently. But either way, now he's starting to seem like he's getting open underneath. He's worked on his route tree, his route running in general, and he's starting to become better and more consistent with his hands. Maybe Dyami Brown is finally here. Also, shouts out to JP Finley for pointing out the fact that McLaurin had a sweet move in 11 on 11s and took a house call, basically scored a touchdown, comes jogging up the field, quote, I needed that rep right there, unquote. So I don't know if Terry McLaurin was having an off day that made him say that or whatever, but that rep helped him out a lot. I'm assuming Jayden Daniels was the quarterback on that play, and shouts out to Terry McLaurin because he's making plays. Apparently, just based on what he's saying, sounds like maybe he had somewhat of an off day. I don't know, but apparently he really liked what he did on that play, and that play was kind of what brought him back to his senses, like, yeah, all right, I'm me, I'm good to go. And I like to hear that, man. Also, shouts out to JP Finley for tweeting, watching practice and Terry McLaurin is moving around plenty for those concerns. So just like he said earlier with for those concerned with the Jayden Daniels thrown over the middle, same format, but this time he's poking fun at the people that were overreacting over Terry McLaurin staying primarily only like an X receiver, only outside, and Cliff Kingsbury's offense was apparently super easy to read and he's showing his hand and things like that. I don't know where all of that stuff is coming from. Honestly, I really don't get it. But it shouts out to JP Finley for showing some more sarcasm right there to let you know that Terry McLaurin will not be pigeonholed to just the X position and that's it. Just pure outside receiver away from everybody else. He's going to be lined up all over the field, even probably in the slot sometimes. And then also, Zach Selby said a few more receivers made explosive plays downfield today, starting with Austin Eckler, who made an over-the-shoulder grab from Daniels and likely would have gone for a touchdown in a game. Love hearing that. Again, that's the Austin Eckler play from earlier. But even just beyond that, Bryson Tremaine, primarily working with the second group. So second teamer sounds like you're supposed to make this 53-man roster. If he was out there with the third stringers, maybe it'll be a little different. But hey, Bryson Tremaine maybe makes this roster. But either way, working with the second group, had a pair of catches over the middle of the field. And this is another guy that has been consistently making plays. Remember that Jets joint practice? We didn't have a lot of highlights. We didn't have a lot of positive notes to take away from it. But Bryson Tremaine got his. He made some plays that day. It seems like no matter the environment, no matter the opponent, Bryson Tremaine makes plays. And then lastly, Zach Selby said that Byron Pringle also caught a go ball that would have certainly have been for a touchdown in a real game scenario. So Byron Pringle still trying to throw his name in there into the mix for potentially making his team. If he makes his team, it's more so because he's one of our starting kick returners, but it would help if he can also contribute as a wide receiver as well. And then Jahan Dotson-Wise, I didn't necessarily hear anything about him from practice. practice. The only thing I know is they did a mic'd up with him today, so go check that on the official Washington Commanders YouTube channel. It's like a quick 5 minutes and it's pretty funny, showing you his personality and things like that. Really makes you want to root for him even more than I already do. But even just beyond that, Pro Football Focus listed their sleeper fantasy wide receivers of 2024. Jahan Dotson was one of them. So, hey, man, watch out. Pro Football Focus believes in Jahan Dotson, then it seems like more than the majority of this fan base right now. Now, moving on to the tight ends. Again, it was nice to see Zach Ertz back at practice. Shouts out to him. The only reason he didn't participate in the joint practice and the preseason game against the Dolphins was because he was having a baby. That's a big shouts out to him. Big congratulations. But again, like I pointed out, even the fact that Jayden Daniels didn't have Zach Ertz, it was a nice test to see, okay, you don't have your favorite target on this team. What are you going to do about it? And he still went out there and did a great job of being a field general for the Washington Commanders in that preseason game and the joint practice against the Dolphins, where he lit up the Dolphins without his favorite target. And then also, as you can see on the screen right now with Cole Turner, shouts out to Scott Abraham for a lot of these clips that you're seeing, first of all. But also, he added the question, will Cole Turner make this final 53-man roster? And this is a very interesting debate right here. Because if we keep 4 tight ends, I think it's very likely. But do they feel the need to even keep 4? Because Zach Ertz is a certified pass catcher who can also block. John Bates is a certified blocker, arguably the best blocking tight end in the NFL. And he's showing you that he can also catch. And then Ben Sinnott seems like the Swiss Army knife, the secret weapon, can fullback, inline tight end, big slot, out wide even if you need him to. And even if you do like a 2 running back formation and shotgun, he could be one of those guys. You can use him in so many different ways. He's very physical in the running game, and he makes amazing catches in the passing game. You see his yards after catch. He probably gives us our best yards after catch, maybe even arguably on the team, but definitely out of the tight end group easily right now. That may be all you need, especially with all the injuries that we have to offensive line, that we have the linebacker. As deep as this safety group is right now, you may use up, instead of keeping a 4th tight end, you only keep 3 and then use that additional roster spot for another position group. But I don't know. I'm rooting for Cole Turner because, again, they cut my boy Armani Rogers for him. So, I mean, at this point, I hope he super balls out and proves this coaching staff wrong and proves me wrong. I mean, proves this coaching staff to be right. Prove me wrong. Make sure you let me know why they chose you over Armani Rogers. Prove me wrong. Make me look crazy. I prefer that, and my Commanders go out there and ball out because Cole Turner's balling out than for me to be right any day of the week. So, Cole Turner, I'm rooting for you, but you got to stop this dropping passes that go right through your hands, which led to a Jayden Daniels interception against the Dolphins in joint practice, and then Trace McSorley interception against the Dolphins in the preseason. You got to get your hands together. But it is very encouraging that he's improved mightily as a blocker. At like year 1, his rookie season a few years ago, he was literally a liability blocking wise. Like, don't even ask him to do it. Now he's actually a pretty consistent blocker. That's big news, man. And if he ends up making the roster, it's going to be because he worked his tail off and proven his blocking. I commend him for that. But you got to get your hands together, man. And then offensive line wise, nothing really noteworthy outside of the fact that Ben Standig at the practice pointed out today that Andrew Wiley was just starting right tackle. Cornelius Lucas was just starting left tackle with the 1s. Then when you got to the 2s, it was Trent Scott at left tackle, Chris Paul at right tackle. And that really shouldn't be any major news to anybody if you've been paying attention to my training camp breakdowns every day like I've been doing every time we've had access to any of these training camp practices. And also my preseason breakdowns. I've been live streaming during the games, and then after the games, I do a full positional group breakdown, group by group, just like I did in this video here. I've been talking about how Andrew Wiley's clearly a starting right tackle. Brandon Coleman will be a starting left tackle when he is back healthy. But until then, Cornelius Lucas is your starting left tackle until Brandon Coleman's ready to go. And then Trent Scott's been primarily working at left tackle with the backups. And I don't like that at all. Trent Scott, he scares me. Protecting Jayden Daniels' blind side, I'm worried. But then Chris Paul, instead of being like a left guard like he was last year for a lot of the season, or even potentially moving to right guard, which is already a transition in itself, that's a pretty big leap. Because don't sleep on that the difficulty of switching from left guard to right guard. That's not a very easy transition like people just assumed it would be. But then even beyond that, now he's been getting a lot of reps at right tackle, and you've been seeing him in the preseason games as well. I believe he was the starting right tackle for us in that Jets preseason game because Andrew Wiley was still hurt. So, hey, man, watch out for Chris Paul. He's definitely going to make this team, and that's some solid depth that we have there that he can play guard, left guard, or right tackle. That's a nice backup piece that you have right there. Now moving on to the defense and overall, Zach Selby said that the defense had a nice start to the day. getting back-to-back pass breakups on the first 2 plays of the day against Jayden Daniels in the first team offense. The first came from Jonathan Allen, who smacked the ball to the ground at the line of scrimmage, while the second one was credited to Bobby Wagner in coverage, although it was probably a sack from Daron Payne before Jayden Daniels even got the ball out of his hands. So shouts out to that defensive line, defensive front specifically, that are just wreaking havoc on our offense right now. I can't wait to see them do it against another team's offense, because we haven't even seen Bobby Wagner take a single snap, even in a preseason game for us yet. So when we go against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's going to be our first time seeing them in a burgundy and gold uniform going after other teams' quarterbacks and running backs and all of that type of stuff. And then going on to the defensive line part, shouts out to Ben Standig, because that was Zach Selby who just told you that about Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne making plays. Ben Standig said, up and down day for the first team offense, but credit to the defense for making plays, especially early. Daron Payne would have had a sack on 1 play, and then it was either Jonathan Allen or either whoever who deflected number 5's first attempt at a pass. And again, it was confirmed by Zach Selby that it was Jonathan Allen. So shouts out to the D-line for being as good as we hope they can be. Can't wait for Johnny Newton to come back healthy, because I'm really excited. And then shouts out to Mason Kinahan, because he tweeted, and I completely agree with this, I'm just as perplexed. I'm curious to see what happens with Efe Obada. He's currently on the PUP list, but would have to be on the final 53-man roster temporarily if Washington wants to keep him and not put him on season-ending IR. So if you want to keep Efe Obada, but you don't want to put him on IR to where he can't play at all this season, not even 1 game, then you have to technically put him on the final 53-man roster, which means you cut somebody that you want to keep just to keep Efe Obada. I doubt it. He also said, I think Obada would be a good add to this front, because he can play 3-tech, he can play edge rusher, whatever, just like KJ Henry's been doing. I'm working on a video about that. He played 3-tech defensive tackle at times in that preseason game against the Dolphins, and that was a surprise to me. I didn't even notice that while watching the footage. I'm going to get there, though. Just wait for that video on the way as well. I want to do like a preseason MVPs video, and I'm going to show y'all why and things like that. KJ Henry, big time player. His stock way up after the preseason. We'll get there. But either way, again, Efe Obada would be a good add to this front, but is he worth having to cut someone else you might not be able to bring back? You know what I'm saying? Because if he's going to have to take up a 53-man roster spot before you put him on the injured reserve list, because you want to at some point this season potentially be able to throw him out there, then that means you would have to cut somebody. And is it worth potentially that you cutting that guy, hoping that you can just hurry up, Efe Obada, 53-man roster list? Okay, that's the final one. Let's go ahead and bring him back on IR. Is it even worth dangling that guy out there that you would potentially have to cut for another team to come get and steal him away from you? I don't think so. I don't know. I love Efe Obada, but this injury situation has made things very difficult for him. Not gonna lie. Now moving on to the linebacker position. The only really noteworthy thing is that Dominique Hampton, who again is a rookie safety that we just drafted, he's now making a full-time switch to linebacker, what it seems. Ben Standig confirmed that again today at practice. We saw it. Ben Standig, I believe, was the one that brought it up from a couple of practices last week. And then we saw him do it in the preseason game. And now he's continuing to do so in training camp practices as well. And again, like I said in my live stream, like I said in my video breakdown after the preseason game, where I did my breakdown just like I do with these training camp breakdowns, every position group. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. I talked about that's probably for multiple reasons. First of all, we have a lot of injuries to the off-ball linebacker group, so we really have openings there. Bo Bauer looks like he's pretty much gone for season, probably wasn't making the team anyway. And then our rookie, Jordan McGee, who I'm very high on, but he's hurt right now. They said it's not a season-ending injury, but they didn't even give us a timetable for that injury. And it was the type of injury with a meniscus that he's probably going to be out for a very long time, which really sucks, but that leaves openings in the linebacker group right now. Secondly, Dominique Hampton he played free safety at times in college, but I feel like he's more of like a box safety, like a Jeremy Chin, Cam Chancellor, J-Ron Curse type of play style. I'm not saying he's literally those guys, but that's his play style, primarily around the box, the same way that we wanted to use guys like Khalid Hudson, things like that. And I guess the safety thing definitely wasn't working out. Maybe we already have enough star box safety guys and we just need more linebackers. Maybe he just wasn't looking good in any of those other roles. Maybe he's looking better as a linebacker. He made plays in that preseason game. We'll see. Now moving on to corner. The only real update that Zach Selby had for that was that Mike Sanderstill's quickness shines in multiple ways on the field. Music to my ears. Daniels completed a screen pass to Olamide Zaccheaus during an 11-on-11 period with the starters, but Sanderstill was in position to jump the pass for an interception and nearly made the play. Now moving on to safety. And Ben Standig pointed out the fact, and y'all know, nobody in this fan base is a bigger Tyler Owens fan than me, man. I've been telling y'all since like February, March that this guy is special. And Ben Standig was at practice today. He pointed out the fact that, yeah, it was a lot of mixing and matching with the rotations, but Tyler Owens got ample reps with the same players from the ones, the starters, and the twos. This guy is just climbing the depth chart every practice that I'm hearing. Every time we have a training camp practice every week, this guy's just higher on the depth chart than he was the previous week, man. And then you had Zach Selby pointing out the fact that safety Tyler Owens is one of the players making a real push for the roster spot right now, and it has caught Quinn's attention. Dan Quinn said, quote, "I'm really been proud of the effort that he's put forth when we're really saying, hey, looking for competitive plays, looking for guys that were absolutely going for it. It was cool to see Saturday night him absolutely emptying the tank, both defensively and on special teams. So he's really been hitting his stride," unquote. So if you're catching Dan Quinn's eyes like that, and he's really like noticing you and even talking about you out loud to the media, that really says something. I'm not still 100% sure Tyler Owens' roster spot is safe for making a 53-man roster, but every day that passes, I grow a little bit more comfortable with assuming that maybe he will be. I'm really excited. And what Dan Quinn is talking about, again, I talked about this in my breakdown after the preseason game, but there was like a special teams play. We all know the defensive play where he ran down the receiver that was running, like, and if it weren't for him, it's probably like an 80-yard touchdown. And that hustle there was ridiculous. But there was also a special teams play where I believe it was Jeremy Reeves or somebody, or Percy, but somebody took like the gunner from the Dolphins out of the play. He went out of bounds. Then when he tried to come back in bounds, that Commanders player that originally pushed him out of bounds kind of left the situation. Tyler Owens was sitting there waiting to basically just hit stick him and decleat him onto the ground. And I'm pretty sure it's stuff like that that the Commanders coaches love. Now moving on to special teams. Just to let you know, the punt returners today were Jahan Dotson, Casmer Allen, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder, and Davion Davis. And Craig Hoffman said on his podcast earlier today with Logan Paulson that Jamison Crowder is usually the first guy to go when it comes to the punt returns and things like that, which may implicate that he's still the starting punt returner and is more likely a safe bet to make this roster than I originally believed until I heard Craig Hoffman say that earlier this morning. So I probably should have had his name in yellow on my 53-man roster prediction. If you haven't seen that yet, go check that out because I already did that. Did a full deep dive into every single player, every single position of who I think will make this 53-man roster. And I also had like an additional around seven guys that were on the bubble that you also had on the screen as well. And I explained why they were on the bubble, why they may make the team, why they may not make the team. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. Also, look at this clip here, man. The relationship between Tressway and All-Pro Revo Jeremy Reeves is just absolutely beautiful, man. And I love how they took it back to the 2006 Atlanta, man. If you know, if anybody's gonna love some Atlanta stuff going on, it's me, man. And so I love the fact that they took it back to that 2006 Laffy Taffy lean with it, rock with a little thing that they had going on right there. What they know about that, man. I love that. Also, lastly, Riley Patterson went 6 for 7 today for kicks, man. He missed from 54, but he made it from 58. One of his best days of training camp, arguably his very best day of the entire offseason since he's been here kicking. And on one side, I'm like, wow, okay, has he figured it out? But no, I'm not falling for that again, because he went crazy in that joint practice against the Dolphins where he didn't miss a single field goal, and I believe all of them were like 50 plus. And then he went out there and missed 2 field goals from less than 50 yards, both of them in that preseason game against the Dolphins. Maybe he's just a practice warrior. Then when you get to games, he gets nervous. I don't know. But it's also even more alarming that in that preseason game, he missed to the left and the right. It'd be different if he was missing one direction every time. We can kind of coach that up. But he's missing both ways, man. And so I don't care how great of a practice he has in a training camp practice until I see it in a game consistently. And at this point, with as much as I don't trust him, I need to see it in multiple games, but there's no multiple games left. I need us to go and find a better kicker before we get to this regular season. I don't care. After the 53-man rosters are cut and everybody releases their extra kickers that they have on roster, I'm pretty sure at least one of those guys is better than what we have. I don't care how great of a day Riley Patterson has. You're not getting me again. You're not gonna fool me. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. You're not getting me. And then next up, before we get up out of here, I have a few random updates, some of them funny, so make sure you stick around. First of all, the Lions signed Rashad Wild Goose, and even though his last name was cool, I hope fans are not panicking about that. I mean, that's just super random, but I still wanted to give y'all that update. Also, shouts out to @Doug KYED on Twitter. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that last name, but he tweeted the Patriots starting quarterback update for now from Gerard Mayo, who's the Patriots head coach. Between Jacoby Brissett and Drake May right now, is it still a competition? And Jacoby is still quarterback one as of today, and that's coming directly from their head coach. I'm only giving y'all that because Jayden Daniels is ahead of Drake May right now, which most people expected, but it's still good to hear. And then also, there was a play in Giants practice today where Malik Neighbors got behind DJ Reed, but Jayden Daniels underthrew him. We've been seeing clips of that all off season. That's going to be Malik Neighbors' life, really. And shouts out to Jay Daniels MVP for pointing this out. And I made this joke a while ago when they said it, but thank you for bringing the joke back up. We basically see why Malik Neighbors had to call off that offensive rookie of the year bet with Jayden Daniels, because he probably got one good look at Daniel Jones in practice and was like, yeah, nah, I have no chance of winning offensive rookie of the year here, man. Unless it's guys that watch all 22 and don't care about stats. I'm getting open all the time, but I mean, this guy, Daniel Jones, can't get me the ball. It is what it is, man. I'm not even about to sit here and deal with this. And also, speaking of Daniel Jones, in hilarious news, look at this 50-second clip of Sauce Gardner answering a question about how he feels about Daniel Jones from practicing against him, man. He was struggling to hold in his lab, and he was struggling, just digging deep within his soul to find anything positive to say about him, even having to lie. Like, man, it's crazy. Look at this clip right here, man. And then shouts out to Mitch Tisler, because I completely agree, man. This whole Jayden Daniels sliding situation, this whole Cliff Kingsbury criticism with this offense, people doing preseason analytics and trying to surmise what our offense will look like based on what Cliff Kingsbury did in the preseason and things like that. This is completely out of control. Leave these people alone, man. It's not that serious. It is just preseason, man. We're here to evaluate, and it is not that serious. Also, shouts out to Willie Lutz on Twitter. He said ESPN proposed individual team practices for $70 that would have allowed you to watch all 17 of your favorite NFL teams' games, but the league said no. Haters. I would love to pay for that, man. I mean, I like watching a lot of different games and things like that, but versus that extremely expensive Sunday ticket, just let me spend my $70 for my individual team. But of course I can see, because they're losing money because of that. But man, that would be a lovely option, man. I just want to make sure I definitely, without a doubt, have all of my Commanders games, and we can figure out the rest later, man. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, shouts out to my boy Disco on Twitter, because he said check your parking for this upcoming season at Commanders Field. They changed the colors and lot assignments. So just for those of y'all that are in the DMV area, even if you're not, if you're a season ticket holder or whatever, you have your parking passes, whatever, I saw this tweet and I felt like, oh, I should definitely mention that in the training camp video, because maybe some people are not aware of that. So I'm just trying to spread the awareness. So make sure that y'all know that. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button, so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points, especially Tyler Owens potentially making this team. Is he a roster lock already, or are y'all like me where you're just cautiously optimistic? Whatever. All of that. How do you feel about Dyami Brown potentially being our wide receiver too? How do you feel about Jayden Daniels being able to get the ball out to anybody? Now, he doesn't just have a couple of guys that he's always depending on. He can spread the ball throughout the entire offense. How do you feel about this defensive line being dangerous? How do you feel about our injury situation? It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. And can you put faith in Riley Patterson's great kicking day today in training camp practice? Are you sold sold on him after that one practice, or are you like me, where it's like, nah, man, you're not gonna fool me again? Let me know how you feel about Dominique Hampton, a rookie safety, potentially making the switch all the way to inside linebacker, from free safety to strong safety to box safety, star position to off-ball inside linebacker. That's a really big leap that people are underestimating. Let me know if you feel like he could potentially have success there. Let me know all of that, and of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.